My name is Ava Brown, born and raised in a small, peaceful town on the coast of California. My town is not big, everyone knows each other, and life here is not too noisy, but enough to feel the warmth and familiarity of the people around. My family is not rich, but always lives happily. My parents are hard-working, loving people, and always create a home full of love and care for my brother, Elijah Brown, and me. Elijah is 3 years older than me, and since I was little, he has always been my friend and protector. We get along very well, never having any major conflicts or arguments. Elijah is a thoughtful brother, always worrying and taking care of me, from the smallest things. Whenever I have difficulties, whether in study or life, he is there to help. I remember the days when he taught me how to ride a bike, the times when he patiently sat down to explain each difficult math problem, or the afternoons when we played together in the small garden behind the house. To me, my brother is not only a relative but also a best friend. But when Elijah turned 18, he had to leave home to attend university in the city. This was the first time my family had been without a member for a long time. It was no longer the days when we grew up together, played in the garden, or sat studying next to each other. The emptiness began to appear in the small house, especially for me. The distance between us was not only geographical, but also in the rhythm of life. Elijah was now busy with his student life, while I remained in town, living in my familiar rhythm. From then on, we only met on special occasions, especially during the end-of-year holidays or major holidays. Every time he returned, I eagerly awaited, as if the time apart only increased the affection between us. Perhaps the distance made us cherish the few moments together even more. Every holiday, Elijah always bought me gifts, small but meaningful gifts, making me feel his care and love more than before. Sometimes it was a book he knew I would like. Sometimes it was a jacket he happened to find that suited me. The day I prepared to leave for college, my heart could not hide the excitement. There would be no more long separations between me and my brother. I would be living close to him, sharing moments of college life together, just like we had shared our childhood at home. The feeling of excitement and joy covered the whole long trip. When the bus stopped at the stop, I looked out the window and saw the familiar figure of Elijah waiting. My heart beat faster when I realized he was looking at me. As soon as I got off the bus, I could not contain my emotions. I ran straight to him, leaving all my luggage behind, my feet pointing towards only one point, the brother I had been separated from for so long. When I touched him, the feeling of all the distance seemed to disappear immediately. I threw myself into Elijah's arms, hugging him tightly. My whole body was immersed in the safety and familiarity that only my brother could bring. Elijah chuckled softly, patted my head like when we were kids, and said in a warm voice, "Lily, you're all grown up but still like a child." But for me at that moment, it didn't matter how old I was. I just knew that I was very happy to finally be close to him, no longer separated or waiting for him for a long time. That feeling was so relieved, as if I had found a part of myself after many years of separation. After hugging my brother tightly, I felt all my worries and fatigue seemed to disappear. Elijah took my luggage, and together we walked back to the boarding house he had arranged. The city streets were bustling and unfamiliar to me, but his presence beside me made everything more pleasant. On the way, Elijah told me about his life here, about the things he had experienced during the years away from home. I felt his confidence and maturity, which made me feel even more secure. When we arrived, Elijah took me to his room. The room was small but cozy, neatly arranged and fully furnished. I felt his care in every corner of the room. From the desk, the bookshelf to the bed, everything was neat, exuding warmth and familiarity. This thoughtful arrangement made me feel close, as if this space was not only for him but also to welcome me, helping me feel comfortable in the new environment. Since we were brothers, we decided to live together to support each other in our daily lives. For me, this was not only a convenience but also a great comfort when entering university life. Having him by my side at this time of great change I found everything seemed easier and there was nothing to worry about. He created a safe place for me, where I knew I would not have to face the challenges alone. But gradually I realized that life was not always as smooth as I thought. When I lived with him, I felt safe and familiar, but then things slowly changed in ways I did not expect. At first, everything was normal. We went to school together, ate together, and shared daily stories like when we were at home. My parents were also happy to know that we could support each other in our new life. However, that closeness gradually became complicated. Emotions that were hard to name began to creep into me. The close brotherly affection now carried an ambiguity that I had never felt before. The moments of sitting next to each other, the times we accidentally touched hands, made me feel strange. The feelings between us were no longer simply family ties. I found myself caught up in a mixture of emotions, both familiar and strange, that I could hardly explain. I tried to reassure myself that the mixed feelings were just a mistake, perhaps due to the change in living environment. However, the closeness between us grew deeper, and those feelings gradually took over my mind. Living together and sharing too many things with Elijah made the distance between us brothers seem to disappear. In me, confusion arose between feelings and morality, between what should be done and strong emotions. Even though I knew this might be wrong, I still couldn't completely control myself. That tension didn't just come from me. Elijah, although he was my brother, was still a man with his own thoughts. Living in the same space with me, a grown girl, also made him feel confused. I noticed it through his eyes, through his gestures, which further increased the confusion in my heart. Not only Elijah, but I myself gradually couldn't deny that I was caught up in complicated emotions. The closeness between us, the unconscious repetition of moments, blurred the line between brotherly love. At first, I tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself that everything would be okay. But the spiral of emotions and guilt grew, engulfing us with no way out. Then one night, the feelings between us reached a new level. After dinner and some small talk, I went back to my room and fell asleep. But in the middle of the night, a small sound from the other bed woke me up. In the dim light coming through the window, I saw Elijah still awake, sitting silently, his eyes filled with something difficult to say. "Elijah, what's wrong?" I asked softly, my voice still a little sleepy, but unable to hide my confusion. He looked at me for a moment, then sighed, walked over and sat next to me, his eyes never leaving me. "I'm not sure. It's just that. I feel something very strange between us," he said, his voice low and deep. His words surprised me. "What do you mean?" I asked again, my heart filled with an indescribable feeling. He was silent, then gently touched my hand. The touch was warm and gentle, as if he wanted to express something difficult to put into words. "Have you never felt a special connection between us?" he asked softly, his eyes shining with something I had never seen before. My heart was pounding, but I kept my hand still in his. "Elijah, I don't know. But this. We shouldn't," I said, trying to stay calm, though I couldn't deny the deep feelings between us. Elijah looked at me, his eyes filled with an irresistible attraction. "I understand," he whispered, "but whenever I'm with you, I can't help but feel this feeling." "Haven't you ever felt this before?" I couldn't answer right away, feeling his hand tighten around mine. In that silence, I also realized that there was an indescribable connection between us. Our eyes were fused, as if everything had disappeared. "Elijah, maybe this isn't supposed to be," I said softly, but I didn't take my eyes off him. "But I can't deny this feeling," he smiled softly, his eyes filled with tenderness. "Me too. Sometimes I wonder if these feelings have been there all along. We just never noticed. We let our emotions guide us, sharing a profound moment." The connection was hard to deny. In the silence of the night, we felt the harmony of two souls who had always been together but had never let these emotions speak. That night we were together, feeling a special connection that neither of us had ever dared to admit. That moment was a synchronicity far beyond the boundaries of ordinary siblings. When the sky lit up, we understood that this relationship had turned into something complicated and difficult to name, not easy to deny. That night changed everything from attachment to an undeniable feeling of a strange affection. From then on, our relationship changed dramatically. Whenever we had time, we spent private moments together, sharing feelings and empathy that we both cherished. That connection grew stronger and stronger. It seemed undeniable that the boundaries had blurred. For the next year, everything went quietly. No one in the family or friends discovered anything unusual. But when Elijah was about to graduate, things began to change. He took a job far away, causing us to see each other less often. From then on, every time we met again, even though it was short, the feelings between us were still as deep as before, and the distance only made the feelings more intense. Life goes on, and I understand that things will change. When I entered my second year of college, I met Henry, the person who would change my life forever. When I met Henry, I gradually realized that the relationship between me and Elijah could not last forever. That was the moment I understood that the attachment to Elijah, no matter how deep, would eventually end. Henry was 26 years old at that time, a promising young businessman. Despite his young age, he had built a solid career for himself, exuding confidence and insight. Whenever he appeared, Henry always attracted others, not only because of his calm appearance, but also because of the way he solved everything with intelligence and ingenuity. We met by chance at a conference that I attended with a few friends. Henry was the keynote speaker, and throughout the presentation, I was captivated by his demeanor and his ability to handle complex issues. After the seminar, we accidentally bumped into each other as we were leaving the room. Henry smiled, politely apologized, and the conversation began naturally, as if we had known each other for a long time. That was the beginning of our relationship. From then on, Henry gradually appeared in my life, and soon we started dating. Although I still had feelings for Elijah at first, Henry's presence became more and more obvious and meaningful. He brought me a sense of stability, security, and peace, things I had always been looking for. We shared dreams and ambitions for the future, and Henry made me believe that I could build a fulfilling life with him. After spending some time together, I realized that Henry was the person I could spend the rest of my life with. As for Elijah, although my feelings were strong, I understood that it was a relationship that could not continue. That feeling, although very special, had become too complicated and inappropriate. I knew I needed to let go and move on to a new life, with Henry, the person I believed would bring me happiness and a stable future. Faced with reality, I knew I had to cut the emotional ties that had bound us for so long. One afternoon, when Elijah came home for the holidays, I decided to talk to him. The tension weighed heavily on my heart, but I knew that this was what I had to do. I went to Elijah, sat across from him, and honestly shared all my thoughts. I told him about Henry, about my feelings, and about the future I wanted to build with that man. I also emphasized that no matter how special our relationship was, it could not last any longer. Elijah listened quietly, his eyes sad but not resentful. He seemed to know this day would come, and after a moment of silence, he nodded, agreeing that it was right to end it. Neither of us said much more, but we both understood that it was time to return to our proper roles as brothers. Although this feeling was difficult, in the end I felt relieved that we had both made the right decision. From then on, we gradually returned to a normal relationship, like true brothers. On the surface, everything seemed easier. We no longer mentioned what had happened, and every time we met, we kept a reasonable distance, chatting lightly as if nothing had happened. Occasionally, we would have dinner with our families or sit in the living room watching TV, but there was always an invisible silence between us. Everything seemed stable, but on the inside it was still very fragile. Even though the relationship had ended, I still felt an indescribable feeling. Every time our eyes accidentally met, I felt confused, as if things had never really ended. There were times when just hearing his footsteps approaching would stir up an inexplicable feeling in my heart. I told myself that I had moved on, that our relationship had returned to its proper role, but in reality that feeling had never really subsided. Even though it was peaceful on the outside, inside I was still mixed with complicated emotions and sometimes tormented. We may have stopped, but I had not completely escaped the haunting of what had happened. Not long after, I graduated from college, and Henry proposed. Our wedding took place with the blessings of family and friends. Elijah was also present, standing silently in the distance, smiling and congratulating me. Now I have started a new chapter in my life, with Henry the person I love and trust, and my life is gradually stabilizing. What happened in the past has now become a lesson, and I know that I made the right choice to step out of that relationship to move towards a better future. Through all that I have been through, I have realized that there are mistakes that we need to face in order to grow. Those mistakes have taught me about emotional boundaries and the importance of maintaining values. Sometimes in life, we are easily drawn into things that are hard to resist, but it is necessary to know when to stop so as not to lose ourselves. I do not seek forgiveness from anyone, because the most important thing is that I have faced my mistakes and found a way to fix them. Henry is a part of this change. He helped me understand the value of a true relationship, where sincerity and lasting love are the foundation of happiness. Thanks to Henry, I realized that not all emotions should exist, and sometimes letting go is the way to find peace. After getting married, my life gradually stabilized, and we started planning for the future, building a home and planning to have children. The story between Elijah and I is now a thing of the past, a part of my memory that I keep deep in my heart. What happened will always be an unforgettable mark, but I have learned to accept and move on. Elijah and I do not talk about the past, and we both understand that the relationship is over forever. Looking back on my own story, I want to share a lesson from my painful experiences and difficult decisions. Sometimes we can easily get caught up in emotions that seem uncontrollable, especially when those closest to us become our source of comfort and support. But through all the difficulties and mistakes, I realized that maintaining moral values and emotional boundaries is important to protect ourselves and others. There are emotions that are best controlled. Do not let a moment of weakness lead you too far. The important thing is to know when to stop, to move towards the right relationships that bring true joy and peace. I chose to let go, accept this lesson, and move towards the future with the person I love. That is what I hope everyone can do too.